welcome back to Lost in Alaska. Today's case will be covering the disappearance and murder of William Michael Mike Christian. Mike Christian was born on March 6, 1949, and attended West Anchorage High School. He was a senior and lived with his parents at 4306 North Star Road. This would be the last place his parents saw their son. Mike would leave his house on November 3, 1966, to visit the Sundowner Drive-In Theater in Chester Creek. After leaving the theater and calling his girlfriend, he said he was going to wash his car, attend a car club meeting, and be home before midnight. His girlfriend told investigators that Mike was in good spirits and was looking forward to the future. Unfortunately, Mike would never make it to the car club meeting. In the early hours of Mike's disappearance, his parents were not worried and thought he may have stayed the night at a friend's. The worry eventually set in when his 1963 Impala was found abandoned in town. This was odd for Mike, as he adored his car and wouldn't have left it abandoned. 3 days later, on November 6, 1966, the Alaska State Troopers began actively investigating Mike's disappearance, with a single officer assigned to the case. The parents offered a $500 reward in the local newspaper, which equates to nearly $4,000 in modern time. Sadly, Mike's disappearance would grow cold. It wouldn't be until 1974, 8 years after his initial disappearance, that a break was made in the case. James Ronald Etheridge would be applying to become a police officer in Spokane, Washington at the time of the breakthrough. While taking the polygraph required to become an officer, Etheridge was asked if he had witnessed any unsolved felonies, to which he then admitted knowing about the murder of Mike Christian. Mike Christian, before switching to West Anchorage High School, spent the first few weeks of his senior year at East Anchorage High. He liked this school, but was forced to switch as his address zoned him for West High School. At East High, he had made friends with a girl. This girl would also date an East High School student named Roger Patty. Mike's relationship with this female classmate caused Maddie to despise Mike. Patty then began carrying his .22 pistol around in case of an altercation. November 3, 1966, the night of Mike's disappearance, Mike Christian and Roger Patty met to talk about the bad blood occurring over the matter. Patty stated to Christian, "I told you to stay away from my girl." Mike then replied angrily, and Patty went to grab his .22 pistol from the car. Mike would wrestle with Patty in an attempt to get the gun, but Patty would end up shooting Mike in the head. Mike would fall backwards onto the car window, and Patty would shoot Mike again. Patty would then load Mike's body into his trunk and leave the scene. As Patty was leaving, he would blow a tire and pull over to the side of the road. Oddly, another classmate of the boys, Arthur Malikian, was driving down Turpin Road and saw Patty pulled over. Malikian would then assist Patty with moving Mike's body into Malikian's truck, and they would then drive to James Etheridge's house and ask for help. Etheridge refused to help and said Malikian, "For God's sake, say anything and I'll swing too." The two then left and went to the home of Ken Wise and the home of Roman Lenz. They all moved Mike's body into the trunk of Lenz's car. Another unnamed female was with the group, and all 5 of them loaded into Lenz's car and began driving west on 15th Avenue in Anchorage, Alaska. As the group was traveling in Lenz's car, they would get pulled over by the Anchorage police with Mike's body in the trunk. Malikian would tell investigators later that it was just a routine check, they weren't speeding or anything. The Anchorage police officer would not search the car and let the car of teens go. They drove around Anchorage with Christian in the trunk. They would then drop off Wise and the unnamed girl and drive east along the Glen Allen Highway out of Anchorage. Lenz would pull off onto an unnamed dirt road in Eagle River, Alaska, and drive far into the woods. Lenz and Patty buried Mike's body in a shallow grave as Malikian stayed by the car. Etheridge's confession would cause the Alaska State Troopers to reopen and build their case against the group of teens. The lack of a body would hinder progress in the case, but on May 9, 1975, Patty would be arrested for first-degree murder. The statutes of limitations on accomplices had expired 4 years previously. The first trial against Patty would end in a mistrial, as the judge stated the prosecution failed to lay the necessary foundation for certain evidence that was subsequently deemed inadmissible. Patty's attorney would request probation on the subsequent retrial. The district attorney focused on the premeditation and noticed that had Patty not carried a gun, then Mike Christian would still be alive today. Patty was sentenced on July 21st, 1977 to 15 years in prison after he pled guilty to manslaughter. Patty would lead investigators to the site of Mike's burial eventually, but animals had already desecrated the remains and none was left to salvage. This was the story of Mike Christian. To see more, please visit our YouTube channel, Lost in Alaska, and hit the subscribe button to make sure you don't miss another video. To be notified whenever we post, hit the notification button on our profile, and they'll let you know whenever we post a new video. If there's a case you'd like us to cover, please write it in the comments or email us at truecrimelostinalaska@gmail.com.